There are going to be times when good, high-quality women, they make a mistake and they behave disrespectfully. If and when that happens to you, and even if you did nothing to deserve it, how you handle it will very much decide what sort of future, if any, you and her are going to have together. Because when a woman acts up, there's really only three possibilities. In some instances, it marks the end of the relationship. Sometimes it's the guy's decision, but more often than not, it's actually the woman who goes cold and loses interest due to how the guy responded to her bad behavior. Look, it's unfair and it's kind of ironic, and unfortunately, it's what very often ends up happening in these sorts of situations. And bad as that may be, the second possibility is even worse. Now, in these cases, the relationship, it continues, but because the guy failed to handle the initial disrespect effectively, he sets the stage for even more disrespect, which only tends to escalate and worsen over time. But there is a third possibility, and this one has a happy ending. If you properly and tactfully address this trash behavior and you effectively nip it in the bud, you actually can save the relationship. Not only that, it really becomes this win-win situation because when handled right, she genuinely sees why her behavior was out of line as well as out of character. She won't repeat her mistake out of concern for you just as much as out of concern for herself. And that's gonna make more sense as we dive into this video. Because look, I've been in this business for a long time, and this is really the only way that I've found to handle a woman's bad behavior that can actually repair things when a woman steps out of line. But to do it, you have to fight the urge to react emotionally, as well as resist the impulse to respond intuitively. What the typical guy feels like doing when a woman disrespects him is often making her regret it. And often that means they expect some kind of contrition or an apology. Now, this is completely wrong. An apology is nothing more than a momentary reparation that doesn't translate to long-term change. Instead, you need to respond in a way that evokes a different emotion, one that actually fuels a woman's desire to change. It's a lesson that I had to learn for myself, which I've since passed along to clients, helping them to save countless relationships. So, if you too want to learn the counterintuitive secret to how to respond to a disrespectful woman, stick around because that's what we're going to cover in today's video. Now, I want to begin by making sure that we're all on the same page here. When I say disrespect, I don't mean a woman saying something slightly offensive or testing you in a way that's within the realm of typical female behavior. To become good with women, you need to develop a thick skin. Just because a woman teases you or maybe tests you a bit, and even if it's a little bit of conflict, that doesn't always equate to disrespect. When I say disrespect, I'm talking about something blatant. An instance where a woman crosses a boundary, and if you're not sure what your boundaries are, think of it like this. If a woman's behavior ever makes you feel like a second-class human or less of a man, that's the sort of disrespect I'm talking about here. Now, some people would say that you should never tolerate any disrespect. And look, in some instances, I'd absolutely agree with that. However, I'd stop short of applying that advice categorically. If you believe that a woman has the capacity to change her behavior, you may want to give her another chance before deciding to cut her out of your life completely. And look, I deal with clients all the time, and that's the case that they're in. And those are the cases that we're going to talk about today. When a woman you genuinely care about suddenly does something that it hits you like that gut punch, you need to do something. I think we can all agree on that, right? But for most guys, what you feel like doing and what you should actually do are often two very, very different things. Guilting, doing it the wrong way. So what most guys do is they focus on the behavior, the thing that she did. And they use that to guilt her. If you've ever said a statement like, "How could you do that to me?" or "You really hurt me," or even "What you did was wrong," those are all examples of guilting statements. And look, I understand why a guy or why you might say something like this. It's almost reflexive. It's almost like a knee jerk response when you're hurt by someone. But guilting a woman is bad, and it's bad for a few reasons. First, you're positioning yourself as a victim, which, even if you are, it makes you seem weak and powerless. Victims, they may not deserve the bad things that happen to them, but let's be honest here, they were also powerless to prevent it. Now, look, don't misconstrue this as victim blaming or me saying that a victim deserves disrespect or they deserve harm. All I'm saying is portraying yourself as a victim, even when you are, it may get you some sympathy, but it's not going to make you appear attractive, nor will it motivate a woman to change her behavior. Now, let me explain why that is. At best, guilting a woman causes her to feel bad about herself. She might apologize, maybe say she'll never do it again, but none of those things, none of that really alleviates her sense of guilt. She's going to be left with this lingering feeling that she victimized you. And this is going to weigh on her conscience. Every time she sees you, or even anytime she thinks about you, it's going to remind her of that weight. And it's going to evoke those bad feelings. And let's be honest, what do we do when something makes us feel bad? We avoid it. So, those lingering feelings of guilt can cause her to avoid you. Even worse, guilting someone doesn't motivate most people to change. I mean, look, just look at the recidivism rate of criminals. Guilt only leads to self hatred or denial. So when you guilt a woman, the best you can hope for is that she's left feeling like a shitty person. And she feels shitty because you framed yourself as a helpless victim, as her helpless victim. Shaming. Doing it the right way. So now let's shift gears and let's talk about what you should do. You want to shame a woman rather than guilting her. People often think of guilt and shame as similar reactions, but they're actually very different. Shame isn't about what you did, but rather who you are. When someone's shameful, they lack positive qualities like honor or integrity. But here's the thing. Most people think they possess positive qualities. And this is especially true of quality women who are worth your time and effort. If she's the sort of girl who's worth a second chance, she should realize her disrespectful behavior is out of character. In a perfect world, she would just immediately have this epiphany. But our brains are very good at rationalizing our behavior as acceptable, even when we do something that goes against our own values. So, that's where you come in. Shaming a woman means showing her two versions of herself. First, you hold up the version that you know and the version that you find attractive, which obviously is the version with the positive qualities. Then you contrast that with her evil doppelganger, the version consistent with her shitty behavior. I'm going to detail case studies in a moment so you understand precisely what I mean and exactly how to do it. But for now, let's consider a very broad-based example. Now, let's imagine a guy. Let's imagine a guy and a girl. They just started dating exclusively, and maybe they're I don't know, watching a movie together. And suddenly her phone buzzes, and the guy looks over and he notices that it's a message from her ex. Now, there are several ways a guy might handle this. Let's start by looking at ways that he could guilt her. Now, he could accuse her of things that may or may not be true, or a less extreme example might be that he only focuses on what he does know, the text, and he might use that to justify calling her out or demanding that she stop talking to her ex. Even if he responds with suspicion and he tries to glean more information, maybe he demands that she unlock her phone, or even just by asking her to clarify this, that's still a form of guilting. The subtext is that she did something that victimized him. But remember what we said earlier. Women don't swoon for victims. There are a lot of sexy masculine stereotypes, but the aggrieved victim, it's not one. Instead, you want to position yourself as the one with status and power while at the same time addressing the problematic behavior. So, shaming checks both of those boxes. Rather than holding yourself up as a victim, you instead hold her up to scrutiny. So, how that might play out is the guy might say something like this: "Huh, so that's weird. Why is your ex texting you? Does he not know we're together? One of the things I find really attractive about you is that you seem loyal and dependable. In fact, weren't you the one who called that Instagram chick, and I'm going to quote you directly here, a stupid floozy for bragging about dating multiple guys and thinking that she was some kind of girl boss? I mean, I remember that we were both laughing about that, and I thought we had that in common, but now I'm not so sure. Was I wrong to think that? Now, notice how that response presents two different girls. One is a loyal, dependable girlfriend who laughs at dumb floozies on social media. The other is a hypocrite who's dating one guy but is still getting texts from her ex boyfriend. When you call out disrespect like this, it really only leaves her one acceptable response, which is to backpedal and qualify herself. If she says something like, yeah, well, I'm not really dependable or loyal, you were wrong to think that about me, then it can really only mean one thing, which is that your perception of her doesn't matter, which probably means she doesn't really care about you. You can only shame someone who values your opinion. And if she did, then she'd justify her behavior and/or she'd start qualifying herself. And the framing is really important here. Unlike guilting, where you frame yourself as a victim, shaming puts you in the power position. You're framing yourself as the judge. You're the buyer and she's the seller. Her rationalizing and qualifying is her way of selling herself to you. In other words, she's chasing you. And this is good for both you as well as it's good for her. It's good for you because you called out her shitty behavior in a high value way, which is both attractive as well as effective. Also, you've incentivized her to make a change without resorting to an ultimatum. Rather than trying to strong arm her by coming out and saying something like, if you ever do that again, it's over. You get that across. I mean, you imply it when you tell her that her shitty behavior contradicts your positive perception of her. Likewise, this approach, it also benefits her. Assuming that she genuinely made a mistake and she acted out of character, you're bringing this to her attention, which realigns her with her core values. Also, this approach gives her a clear path forward. By presenting her two options, she gets to choose how she wants to feel. If she wants to feel good, if she wants to feel like she's living up to your standards, as well as to her own standards, she'll choose to behave better. If she doesn't, if she chooses to repeat her mistake, she's choosing to feel shameful. She's bringing that shame upon herself. So compare this with guilt, where you just make her feel bad without giving her a way forward. Even if she does all the things that guilty people do, like apologize, like promise never to do it again, promise to make it up to you, it's all just words. A lot of the times, a lingering feeling of guilt remains since the scales remain imbalanced. If she feels you're her victim, simply reciting platitudes isn't going to alleviate her feelings of guilt. So, for these reasons, shaming is not only a more effective strategy, it also tends to be the more ethical approach. Whenever I work with a client who feels that he's been so morally wrong that he needs to even the score by making a woman regret what she did, I always tell him, go ahead. But then I always add, just don't expect to ever see her again. Because if your goal is to make a woman feel like shit, then by all means, go ahead and guilt her. But if you actually want to make things work, then heed my warning. The more you make a woman feel guilty, the less she will ever want to be around you. So after years of coaching and refining this technique, I found there are 3 things that you can pepper in that will help you stick the landing with this. So try to incorporate these 3 tips whenever possible, whenever you're applying this technique. 1, use humorous absurdity to drive your point home. 2, use her own words to reveal the incongruence and hypocrisy of her behavior. 3, leverage the power of the golden mirror. I'm going to demonstrate each one of these tips with a case study that will hopefully reinforce everything else that you've learned from this video. So let's look at those case studies. Case study 1, humorous absurdity. So I was working with a client just the other week, and we were troubleshooting a situation where he was out with a woman that he'd been dating on and off for quite a bit, and he found himself in a situation where she wanted to stay out and go to an after party. When he said he was tired and he didn't want to go, she said, all right, then I'll go without you. And my client felt like she was prioritizing an after party over him. And look, I could see his point. He explained that this was an ongoing issue and he felt like they were just arguing in circles. Like this was a fight that they were just constantly having over and over again. So I sat there and I considered the situation and I asked him, I said, what do you really like about this woman? And he rattled off a bunch of reasons, but a few that I keyed in on, I jotted down my notepad, was that he said that she's very nurturing, and even though she's in her early 20s, he kind of liked the way that she already talks about wanting to have kids, and he could see her being like a really great mom. And another thing that he mentioned was how she never misses church on Sunday. Now, these positive, attractive qualities are inconsistent with a party animal who stays out until the early AM hours at, after parties or hanging out or whatever goes on, those late AM hours. So I told him to use that to call out her behavior. I mean, think about it. Imagine a girl in a sexy cocktail dress stumbling into Sunday Mass at 8 a.m. Or imagine a mom tucking in her kids, reading them a bedtime story, and then hopping into an Uber to go out there clubbing. It's like something out of a comic book. The visual is downright absurd and completely contradictory to her values. Case study 2, using her words against her. Next up, let's imagine a common scenario where a woman cancels plans at the last minute without giving a valid reason. Now, most guys would instinctively want to guilt her by saying something like, I can't believe you're canceling on me, or why didn't you let me know sooner? But remember, guilting isn't the way to go. Instead, try using her own words against her. I mean, think about it. Has she ever complained about how she hates flaky people, or did she ever mention how reliability and commitment are important to her? Now, if you can remember a conversation or a comment that she made like that, calmly respond by reminding her of that, by reminding her how she's the one who said she hates flaky people or that she likes dependable people. And ask her, so what's changed? And to pull this all together, you might say something like, look, I thought you were reliable. That's one of the things I really liked about you. Was I wrong to think that? See how this approach parrots her own standards back to her and puts her in a position where she either has to acknowledge her hypocrisy or she has to correct her behavior. Case study 3, using the golden mirror. Now, this third and final case study is a bit of a damaging omission. It's actually a time a girl used this strategy on me, which made me realize the power of it. I chose this example not only because I could speak to the effectiveness of it, but also because it's a perfect application of the golden mirror technique, which is something that we teach in detail in the Unlock the Scrambler course. So just a quick plug on that. If you want to learn more about that course and learn more about the golden mirror technique in particular, check out this link. So get back to my story here. A few years back when I was single and I was casually dating, I was seeing these two girls at the same time. And since I hadn't committed to either one of them, in my mind, this wasn't dishonest or it wasn't bad. However, even though it wasn't a problem for me, it was a problem for one of the girls, who we'll just call Jen. Obviously not her real name. So Jen took it upon herself to do a little online sleuthing, and she ended up contacting the other girl that I was dating, who, for the sake of this story, we'll call Ariana. So Jen and Ariana, they exchanged some messages on Instagram, and they both confronted me over the phone, which came as back-to-back phone calls. Now, the first call was from Jen, which, when I picked up, that was a bit of an ambush. I had no idea that she and Ariana had been talking, so I wasn't expecting to pick up and immediately get an earful from her. But that's exactly what she gave me. From the moment I said hello, Jen started screaming her head off. Her anger level was already dialed up to like an 11, and it only got worse from there. Now, I'm sure you can imagine what she said. For 20 minutes or so, she gave me the guilt greatest hits with all the classics, like, how could you do this to me? How do you sleep at night? And at one point, she even said, I can't believe you'd have the temerity to do something like this. And I remember distinctly holding the phone for my ear and thinking, holy shit, when a girl pulls out an SAT word like temerity, you know she's serious. But here's the thing. Despite all her ranting and raving, I really didn't care. She was trying to make me feel guilty about something that I didn't see as something that I should feel guilty about. In my mind, she wasn't my girlfriend. We never discussed being exclusive. And so her wild harangue only left me feeling like she was the one who was acting crazy. And when I told her that, and I told her that she was acting kind of crazy, I'm sure you can imagine how well that went over. So I hung up with Jen, and a few minutes later, my phone started ringing again. And now it's Ariana. And knowing exactly why she was calling, I reluctantly picked up, fully expecting to get another earful. But Ariana was totally calm. She was actually being really polite. And after saying hello and she made some small talk, she mentioned talking to Jen. Oh, great, I remember thinking, here it comes. But again, she didn't seem angry. She didn't seem upset. Instead, she told me, she said, look, I get it. You're not my boyfriend, so you're free to do whatever you want. I'm just a little surprised. And I'm also kind of disappointed. I mean, I always thought you dated really pretty girls. I mean, that's the name of your company, right? Date hotter girls. But Jen, I saw Jen, and she's not a hotter girl. Now, of all the things that Ariana could have said, there was probably nothing that could have gotten under my skin more than what she had just said to me. It left me scrambling. It left me qualifying myself to her. I remember at one point, I tried to say that Jen was attractive, and she just matter-of-factly shut me down and said, no. I saw her pictures on Instagram, and I'm sorry. She's gross. And then she hung up on me. And to this day, I maintain that I'm right. I still think that Jen is an objectively attractive woman, but objective reality didn't really matter. What mattered was how I felt in that moment. Ariana very skillfully positioned herself as the judge. Then she held up two versions of Rob. One version dates hotter girls. The other version doesn't date hotter girls. He dates gross girls, apparently. And since I obviously think of myself who knows a thing or two about dating, it would be shameful if I dated gross women. I mean, I wouldn't have a YouTube channel. I'd be a fraud. Also, notice the contrast between the way that Jen and Ariana handled the situation. Jen came at me like the angry victim, right? And she was demanding my guilt. Ariana, on the other hand, calmly positioned herself as the judge, and she used shame to make her point. Two different women, two different ways to handle things, with two very different outcomes. I ended up phasing out one of those girls, and I ended up marrying the other one. And I'm sure you can figure out which was which. All right, well, that about wraps things up for today. If you like tactics like this and you want an entire crash course on tactics like this, tactics and techniques like the ones that you just learned in this video, again, highly recommend you check out the Unlock the Scrambler course that I created with Bobby Rio. Visit www.unlockthescrambler.com/Rob, and that will give you more details on that. Oh, and one thing you can do that doesn't cost anything but really helps out the channel is if you enjoyed today's content, enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. Also, make sure to connect with me on social media. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X, and leave a comment below because I love hearing from you guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next week.